How's it going? I'm Brandon Lee, and this is going to be a video about using your DJI RS4 gimbal to shoot travel video shots. So in this video, I'm going to be teaching some beginner shots and some more advanced, complicated shots. So you can choose whichever suits you the best and try it out on your next travel adventure. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, let's talk about the settings. I'm using my A7S III camera, shooting 4K 24p, S-Log3, S-Gamma3 Cine, the same picture profiles I always use. And the lens that I have here is my 24mm T1.9 Samyang VAF Cine lens. I use the Samyang VAF Cine kit because all the lenses in this kit are similar size and weight, which lets me switch them out without rebalancing the gimbal. On the lens, I have my variable ND, and it's magnetic. This is an H&Y Evo variable ND. I have my aperture closed down to f6.3 at the moment, and I'm going to be in manual focus, focused at infinity, because generally I'm capturing wide shots around here and I'm focusing on the buildings in the background. So I want to make sure the focus doesn't do anything unpredictable. I will be changing gimbal settings for each shot, but to start off with, I'm going to be in pan tilt follow mode, and my follow speed is just going to be set to slow. Let's start off by capturing the view. So I've got a beautiful vista here, but it's kind of flat and two-dimensional looking unless I add some camera movement. So I'm gonna frame up my shot in pan tilt follow mode by moving the gimbal around until it looks just right to me. Then I'm gonna lock it off by holding down the trigger on the gimbal. So now it's not following my pan, my tilt, or my roll. And then I'm gonna face the gimbal forward, and I will just do my ninja walk going straight this way. So the camera's pointed out toward the view, and I'm walking perpendicular. Let's see how this looks. Next, I'm going to give you some tips for getting really smooth pans with your gimbal. You may have noticed that when you try to pan while you're shooting, either the pan is a little bit mechanical looking, a hard start and a hard stop, or it doesn't stop in exactly the frame that you want at the end of your shot. Well, here's how I overcome that. I have my pan speed set to 12, which is very slow. I'm gonna quickly turn my wrist to face the gimbal where I want the camera to face. And you see what the camera just did? It slowly caught up to the position of the gimbal handle. So whatever direction this handle's facing, the camera will turn to catch up with that. So wherever I want my final frame to be, I just turn the gimbal handle in that direction, and the camera will eventually turn to face the lens right there. Behind me is this church and the statue and a bend in the road. And if I just flip around my camera, you'll see that this shows a microcosm of Lisbon. You've got the statue, you've got the old church, and you've also got trams and other old vehicles passing by. So I'm still gonna be in pan tilt follow mode, and I'm gonna start tilted up a little bit and then tilt down as I walk forward. Here's one quick tip about tilting up with DJI gimbals. Sometimes I find that the gimbal doesn't respond fast enough when I try to tilt up, especially if I have the follow speed set to one of the slower settings. So what I do to overcome this is I hold down the trigger like this with my finger, and then I pull the handle back a little bit like this, and then I release the trigger. And then when I bring the handle back to neutral, I don't know if you can see it, but the lens tilts up slightly. And then it will be easier to do a more dramatic tilt up during your shot. It just makes the motors more responsive. Here's another shot I love to do when I'm traveling, crossing the street. So you gotta be careful about this one because of course you don't wanna get too distracted by your camera. But what I do is when I'm about to cross the street, I keep the camera pointed to the side like I demonstrated before while I'm walking forward. So just by crossing the street while walking with your gimbal, you can get a shot with a lot of nice parallax that makes it look very 3D. Let's talk about the native vertical mode on the RS4. So I can switch from horizontal to vertical without changing out any parts on the gimbal. So first, I'm gonna unscrew this camera plate and then press this button here to release it. And then I flip the camera around and reattach it and screw it back in. And now the camera is in vertical mode. I will have to rebalance it a bit, but that's all it takes. Vertical mode functions pretty much just like horizontal mode. After I rebalanced everything, I didn't have to recalibrate the gimbal. I just retained the same settings, and then I can shoot as normal. So I'm in pan tilt follow mode, and I'm just gonna do slow push in toward this statue. Here's a new feature of the RS4 that you might not be aware of. You can use the joystick of the gimbal to digitally zoom your shot. To engage the joystick zoom, you just flick this switch up. I don't have a mechanical zoom lens with me, but I do have my 75mm prime, which gives me this frame that you're seeing right now. But if I want to zoom it in digitally while I'm filming, then all I have to do is hold down on the joystick, and the zoom speed will change according to the position of the joystick. Let's talk about making your gimbal shots look more three-dimensional. So right now I've switched out to a 100mm lens on my camera, and I want to film the trams coming from around the corner behind me. So the first thing I'm going to do is lower down my gimbal to ground level, basically, which puts some of the road in the foreground of my shot. This adds another layer of depth to the composition and makes everything look more 3D. Then I'm going to rise up slowly with the gimbal as the tram comes toward me, and that will create some parallax in the shot. So by taking advantage of this natural backlight and then adding some parallax into my shot along with that foreground element, I will get a nice three-dimensional looking image. And here it comes. Now I'm gonna get some tracking shots chasing some trams, and here's how I'm gonna do it. I've got my 35mm lens on my camera that gives me a normal focal length, which makes these side tracking shots look nicer. And the gimbal is gonna be in pan tilt follow mode, but whenever I do a shot, I will hold down the trigger to lock it off. So basically, I'm just using the pan and the tilt to set up my framing beforehand. And then once I've got my framing set, I hold down the trigger and lock it. So whenever a tram comes by, I'm gonna take off, try to run parallel to it, and keep it in the center of my frame. When I'm running with my gimbal, I lower myself down a bit like this to absorb some of the shock with my knees so that I don't get as much bounce in my shot. Because otherwise, if I was running normally like this, the gimbal would be bouncing up and down like crazy. And the goal when I'm running is to stay alongside the tram perfectly so that it stays centered in my frame without needing to pan or tilt to compensate. That's what really makes shots like this look cinematic, when you don't have to do unnecessary camera movement to keep the subject in frame. If you're gonna attempt to do a shot like this, make sure that you check out your environment beforehand. If you look around me, there's basically nothing for me to hit as I run. It's nice and wide and open. And that's why I chose this space to try to do this shot. All right, that's the end of the lesson. Once again, I am Brandon Lee. If you want to know more about the DJI RS4, there will be a link in the description. If you want to learn more from me, I do also have a link to my film school, Unscripted Studio, in the description of the video. So please like, subscribe, and get out there and use your gimbal. I'll see you next time.